All right, so I'm a little late on this, but better late than never. Texas's heartbeat bill, Florida is now doing something similar, and so what's going on is that it's harder and harder for legal abortions to occur. I would say that this is a good thing. A lot of people are really upset about it. The argument is that this is my body, therefore I have the choice to do with it. We are going backwards in time to a place where women didn't have freedom, women didn't have rights, women didn't have the ability to choose what they wanted to do. And here's my position on it. Number one, what I'm about to say is not casting judgment. I can't imagine the amount of pressure, the feeling, the emotion that goes into having to make, like, people who are really in the position of having to decide, do I have an abortion or not? Like, do I carry this child or do I abort this child? I can't even imagine the immense pressure that would put on someone's life. And so I'm very empathetic toward that. So what I'm about to say is not casting judgment. It's simply arguing the other side. So the argument from the pro-choice side is that this is my body, therefore I have the right to choose this to do with it. My argument is the opposite. It's not your body, therefore you don't have the right to choose what you do with it. So, to go into the argument, I think that the pro-choice argument is one of the, emotions aside, I'm fully empathetic, and I can't imagine how much pressure someone has on them to have to choose to abort a baby or not. Emotions aside, argument versus argument, the pro-choice argument is one of the weakest arguments that I think could ever be formed. The very foundation by which people say they have the right to choose to have an abortion is the very same reason why they don't have the right to choose to have an abortion. It's my body, therefore it's my choice to do with myself what I want. Okay, but it's not just your body. It's now someone else's body. And I said this before in another video, there's a survey done of 5,000 biologists. And 95% of the biologists, these are people who specialize, their expertise is the study of life. 95% of the 5,000 biologists said that life begins at conception. So that baby, that embryo, that fetus, whatever you want to call it, that's inside a pregnant woman, now has the same rights, because it is a life at conception, as the woman who's carrying it. And so the woman's rights can't infringe on the child's rights. Just to drive this point home further, and I was surprised to see this, 38 out of our 50 states have fetal, I think it's called fetal homicide laws. So if someone were to harm an unborn child, so a woman's pregnant, someone harms the woman and the baby is harmed as well, then there's criminal punishment for the person who did the harming, both for the woman who's carrying the child and the child. So why is it that when someone harms the woman and harms the child, there's a problem, but there's not a problem when the woman harms the child? I don't know how you reconcile those two things. That's 80% of our country's states. Like, you could go almost anywhere and get abortions now at extremely young ages. Why is it that that's accessible and that's accepted, but if someone were to harm a woman and also harm the child, then it's a problem? Why would we not say that if the child is harmed as the result of whatever, if the child is harmed, then it's a problem? Why do we accept one but not the other? We should not accept either, is what I would say. And again, it goes back to my first point. I really think the whole argument is really one of the worst arguments you could come up with. This is my body, therefore I can do this with it. Actually, it's not just your body. And because of that, you can't do something with it. You can't harm someone else. It is someone else's life. That life, baby, embryo, fetus, again, whatever you want to call it, now has the same rights as you, and you can't hurt it. You legally should not be able to do anything with it. And people will say, well, if you don't allow women to have abortions legally, then they're just going to go seek them illegally. What's the difference between, I saw this came out just the other day too, Abby Johnson. She is a former director of a Planned Parenthood clinic. She completely changed her life course and now speaks out against abortion, speaks out against Planned Parenthood, and she is super pro. I think her Instagram is pro-life Abby Johnson. I saw she posted just a few days ago, like, the equipment, the instruments that are used in these abortion clinics, like, I think surveys showed that like 70 to 80% of them are unsterilized. So like they're using them in one person and then using them in another without cleaning them, and then using them in another without cleaning them. So like that's pretty bad too. Like even the legal ones are pretty bad. So are we really going to draw a distinction between the legal ones and the illegal ones? They're all unsafe. For the mother, they're all unsafe, and they're definitely all unsafe for the child that's being aborted. And again, not casting judgment. This is just argument versus argument. It is one of the weakest arguments that someone could form. You don't have the right to do this with your body simply because it is not just your body. It does not just alter your life, it alters someone else's life. As deemed by biologists, that thing inside a pregnant woman at conception, forget about 6 weeks, forget about detecting a heartbeat. At conception, it has a life and now has the same rights as you. And it's up to people to step up and defend those unborn children because they can't speak up for themselves. And I think it's incredibly weak when men fall into the trap of saying, well, men shouldn't get a choice or a say in the matter because it's not our bodies and it doesn't have to deal with us. Okay, so if one gender shouldn't have a say in what happens to another gender, then what about all the children who are inside the pregnant women who are males? Should the mom, because she's a female, not be able to have a say in what happens to the life of the male child inside her because they're not the same gender? Again, like, the arguments are so weak, there's so many holes in them. And then the adoption and the foster care one. That's a legitimate argument to have, but it's also a separate argument. Like, yeah, let's talk about how we improve the foster care system. Let's talk about how we get more children adopted. Let's talk about awareness and getting more people involved. Let's have that conversation. But that doesn't justify killing innocent unborn children. Life struggles all throughout life. No matter where you're from, no matter what your family history is, no matter what your background is, struggles all throughout life. So to say that, oh, well, this child is going to face all these struggles, all these challenges by growing up in the foster care system, therefore let me make the decision for them to not live, is not justifiable. Because no matter what their situation is, foster care, no foster care, grow up in 2-parent home, 1-parent home, no parent home, growing up with their aunt, growing up with their grandma, people are going to run into challenges their whole life. So you can't say because you're going to struggle, well, now let me just take your struggle away from you and not let you live. I think everyone has struggled, and so to say that your struggle is not worth you living is an absolutely abhorrent argument. Again, every angle at which you go, there's so many holes in all the pro-choice arguments. There's so many holes in all of them. And what it comes down to, I've said this before in another video, when you bring up the rape cases, number one, those are they account for very, very few of abortion cases. Very few. But let's talk about them. Let's address them. When someone is raped and now has a child from the person who raped them, should they be able to have an abortion? For a long time I said yes, until recently I heard an argument that made me say, wow, you can't, at the core of it, here's what the matter is, and you can't escape it. And here's what's at the core of it. Is it worse to be the victim of a crime or to inflict a crime on someone else? And I think we all know that it's worse to be the person who inflicts a crime on someone else. Yes, it's terrible, it's tragic for that to happen to you, but it would be worse if you created some domino effect and, as a consequence of what happened to you, punish someone else for it. We would call that trauma, right? Like people who grew up in families where they experienced, negativity and bullying and harsh words and abuse, and then that person then carried that out to other people. We would say that that's an unhealthy relationship that came from trauma. The people who are on the receiving end of it don't deserve that. It came from an understandable place, like reasonably people can understand that, but they don't deserve that. And it's not right that they're on the receiving end of it. Just like the child, the child doesn't deserve to be aborted because someone did something bad to you. The child doesn't deserve to have its life snuffed out because someone did something horrible and tragic and horrific to you. As bad as it is, as bad as that is, as traumatic as that can be, an unborn child does not deserve to have its life snuffed out because of what someone else did. Again, fully empathetic, fully sympathetic, just argument for argument. It's one of the weakest arguments that can be formed. It's our job to protect unborn children because they can't defend themselves.